I am pleased to be joined by the artist who just sang that musical excerpt. He is known for the splendor of his voice due to its beauty and flexibility, as well as his dramatic and intense stage presence. He hails from St. Louis, Missouri, and it was during his teen years that he is inspired by the voice and career of Mario Lanza. He goes on to complete his musical studies at Indiana University, and he joins the United States Army Corps in Washington, D.C. He later joins the roster at New York City Opera in 1970, and he begins to establish himself in the lyric baritone roles of Don Giovanni, Eugene Onegin, Barbara of Seville, Ford and Falstaff, Peleas, and Guglielmo in Mozart's Così fan tutte, which he makes his Met debut in 1975. But perhaps it's Billy Budd, the role in which he's most remembered, the Benjamin Britten opera, which had its Met debut with the John Dexter production in 1978. All the critics were unanimous in his praise. He goes on to conquer the other great opera houses of the world: La Scala, Houston, Seattle, Chicago, Covent Garden, Deutsche Oper Berlin, San Francisco, and the Paris Opera. And we are thrilled that he is here because he is our Marcello in today's performance. I want to welcome Mr. Richard Stilwell. Thank you for being here. And I want to start out by asking you, did you have any idea in 1982, 38 years ago, that this production would be such a hit and that we'd be talking about it for almost 40 years later?
Well, I don't think any of us could have predicted the degree to which this production would be embraced by the public. Um, Although everything directed by Zeffirelli had the potential of being very special and successful, Franco has sometimes been criticized for bringing too much excess to his productions, and that may have been the case occasionally. But I feel with the Bohème, he was able to show the grandness of opera, along with the intimacy of this tragic love story.
Are there any particular moments with regard to Franco Zeffirelli which really stick out in your memory 38 years later?
Well, first of all, I loved watching him work. Once we got on stage, he went into this high gear and he utilized every minute to make it count because he knew that stage time was limited and we were dealing with a huge cast. And I loved working with him personally. And he told me at the start of rehearsals that I should be the take charge guy with my bohemian friends. He said Marcello should be aggressive, but simpatico at the same time. And I hope that's what came across. Um, I think as a man of the cinema, he was always looking through the camera lens, so to speak. A few times he would make this gesture, and he would look at the big picture and then the close-up of the main characters. And obviously he knew a video of the production was scheduled to be seen via satellite around the world, so it was a big deal. He wanted to get it right. Um, I particularly loved doing the Act 3 scene with Teresa as Mimi. I got the sense that he directed these one-on-one scenes as a play or drama, and all the emotions came straight from the heart. He was right there between us, coaching us as we played. It was wonderful. And as you may know, Teresa is a phenomenal actress, so for me, playing opposite her was a memorable highlight of my career. You had to really up your game when you were on the stage with Teresa.
You sang with Renata Scotto in this production, one of the leading sopranos in the world at the time, but she was not in the primary role of Mimi, but that of Musetta. So, what was it like singing your two or so scenes opposite her, and what was the effect of her presence on the overall production?
Yes, in truth, there are not many scenes in which Marcello and Musetta play opposite each other, except near the end when they are in the garret together right before the death of Mimi. Uh, because of their petty jealousies, they're kept apart for much of the opera. Uh, but at the end, the reconciliation is a very important element, and I think it's a really a very nice touch to the story. But Scotto, you may know this also, had actually sung Mimi opposite Pavarotti in the Met production before this one, which I think was in 1977 or thereabouts. She was, of course, a superstar and greatly appreciated. I don't personally know how she felt about singing Musetta instead of Mimi, but I must say she threw herself into this role with great gusto. Uh, she was a delight to be around, and I think she added much to the so-called star quality of the cast. And I'm sure she looked forward to working with Zeffirelli again, because she had done his Manon Lescaut just a couple of years before this, um, and that was a huge success for her. So with me, she was a gracious colleague, and we got along beautifully. And I was thrilled to be cast opposite her because, as with Teresa, I was a big fan. So it was a star-studded cast for sure.
Now, before you came on, we played just a bit of your Billy Budd, a little snippet from a Saturday broadcast, Met broadcast from 1979. Where does Billy Budd rank amongst your favorite roles?
Yes, Billy Budd was certainly one of my favorite roles, especially with this Met production and its fantastic use of hydraulic lifts to signify the different decks of the man of war ship, the Indomitable. It was a real case of amazing ingenuity and knowledge of hydraulics that made it possible. So hats off to the Met crew for being able to do this. And there's a little story too as to how I landed this role at the Met. I had done my very first Billy Budd in a production with the Hamburg Opera in 1972, near the beginning of my career. And back then, such operas were done in German. A house singer with the opera in Hamburg was meant to do the role, but he came down with a serious illness, and I was asked to step in at the last minute, so to speak. And somehow I was able to learn the role in about 2 weeks. I don't know how, when you're young, such accomplishments seem to be possible, but I learned it, I went there, I sang it, I had a nice success, and this production was directed by John Dexter, whom some people of a certain age will remember. Um, he was a marvelous director, and so he ended up coming to the Met shortly thereafter, a couple of years after we did this Hamburg production, and then asked for me to do Billy for him in the Met's production. And the Met production would also star Sir Peter Pears, who was, as everybody knows, Benjamin Britten's longtime partner. So this was quite an opportunity for me at the time, and to have this connection with someone who had started out, who had been there at the beginning of the opera, was really amazing. And Sir Peter was just a sheer delight as a colleague. It brings back such warm memories of me working with him.
Now, I know you spent a good amount of time teaching at the university level, but I'm just wondering, after this fantastic career, are you still singing and teaching, or have you decided to take a well-deserved break?
Yes, I taught for 18 years at the Chicago College of Performing Arts of Roosevelt University, and I taught studio voice and also a graduate class on performance techniques, uh, which was somewhat based on the opera acting classes I had taken from my mentor, Frank Corsaro, a great man and a great director. Um, in fact, he had directed my professional debut with the New York City Opera as Peleas in this opera back in 1970. So these years are filled with wonderful memories, working with my dear colleagues back at Chicago College of Performing Arts, including Judy Haddon, David Holloway, Michael Best, Alan Glassman, Cynthia Clary, Mark Creighton, and of course many others over the years. I've retired now from singing, both singing and teaching, but I have a soft spot in my heart for all those teachers trying to do their work amidst these difficult times. What challenges they all face, as we all know. I am hunkered down now with my wife here in Virginia, and we both have hopes of seeing and cuddling with our first grandchild one day, a little boy who is about 4 months old now.
Well, Mr. Richard Stilwell, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us a little more insight into your time with Franco Zeffirelli and this production we're going to see. This was quite a treat.
Thank you very much, Arthur, for reaching out to me and for organizing this interview. And I apologize that it had to be a bit improvised, but thank you for your forbearance. All the best to you with your work at Michigan Opera Theater. Thanks again.